First time winning an international award. Selfish. My goal is to take the treatment that I've developed and help people. So leading to a lot of the headliners who being at Tuskegee University, I just started at Morehouse School of Medicine on Monday to pursue my dream to help people with the treatment that I've developed. So when I finally got it to work, we filed a patent, provisional patent application, full patent application, and the University of Alabama got a new president who said any technology that might not be commercialized within 2 years, turn it back over to the inventors. Now I have to raise the money to pay for this patent myself so that I can maintain control over it without the pharmaceutical company buying it and putting it on the shelf so that it never sees the light of day. So the message that I'm getting out, trying to get out, is this is something that the community can own that's ours. And it's also something that can be a viable alternative to chemotherapy and radiation. The treatments that I developed are minimally invasive, using lasers and nanotechnology. And simply put, these little bitty particles heat up and they provide a very local, specific treatment to just the tumor and not the whole body. I intentionally designed it so that it is not cancer type specific, but if it's a solid tumor, whether it's the primary location or the secondary location, which includes metastasis, it should work. So the recent grant that I received will help me further develop that, but it won't pay for a patent and those types of things. So it's an honor and a privilege. I think I'm right around the 10-minute mark to be here and to share my story and to share my testimony. And I am happy to receive more questions. Thank you.
All the day long. So, wow. My thoughts are, at this point, I want to have a breakout session, have a meeting with my brother over there, Sean Trotter, to talk to our sister over here about how we can get a small business research grant for you. And you just happen to be in the room of the Illinois Medical District, where we have innovative research, where we have a lot of think tanks going on. It just so happens that the executive director of the Illinois Medical District is sitting in the room too. So I think you're in the right place at the right time. And this past Saturday, I had the privilege of being honored by the Metropolitan Chicago Breast Cancer Task Force as a community change agent for breast cancer. And when I was giving my remarks, I opened up by saying that I feel like my life is the amen to prayers that we prayed long before. It's not that I prayed those prayers. I prayed a lot, but I understand very clearly that I'm standing on the shoulders and living on the blessings and living on the prayers of people that went long before me. And I'm so excited that a little black girl from St. Louis can sit next to a little black boy from Muskegon Heights, Michigan, a very similar town, who was raised by a father from Arkansas, Wheatley, Arkansas. And you think about the prayers that father prayed, your parents prayed, your uncle and aunt prayed, grandparents prayed for us to be able to do what we do. And I also think that what I've been able to do, I also don't do as a single scientist or a single researcher. I do built on the legacy of African American geneticists like Dr. Rick Gibbons. I do it built on the legacy of our very own cancer center director, the first African American cancer director in the country, Dr. Robert Wynn. And when I think about the narrative that exists in society today about African American men, there was a recent report that came came out that talked about unemployment in African American men in Chicago, and it talked about violence in African American men in Chicago. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that there was a plot out against African American men. I went to college, and because I grew up in a small town in Muskegon Heights, Michigan, where I came home every day, and my father was black. I went to church every Sunday and Wednesday and Friday. That's what we did back then. You were a coaching apostolic. You lived in church, and so every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, my preacher was black. And twice a year I went to an African American doctor as a primary care, and then twice every 6 months I went and got my teeth cleaned by African American dentists. So I didn't grow up seeing this deficit. We didn't have a lot, but I didn't grow up seeing this deficit of leadership. I went to college and they kept talking about this and we were right. But then I began to think about why I was there and that take place. Similar stories. Brother Sean, I hope we can find a way to talk about the similarities and the stories of those of us who get a chance to sit in these seats, even with Dr. McKinney. And we all share these similar experiences and how we got to where we are and the sacrifice that others made for us to get there. So the reason that I say that my life was the amen to prayers that went on before me. Imagine what happens when an 8-year-old boy loses his mother to breast cancer, right? Imagine what that's like. And I remember being that 8-year-old boy whose mother died of breast cancer. That 8-year-old boy then gets surrounded and loved by sisters who step in and say, there won't be a gap, there won't be a deficit in your life. And they were absolutely right. There was not one. There was an abundance of them. Then imagine that 8-year-old boy now turns into a 19-year-old young man, and he gets a call, and the father, who's been a rock for him, is now diagnosed with colon cancer. And coupled with his diabetes, this was not looking well, right? But he had learned some things from watching his wife die from breast cancer. He had learned the secret to early detection. So we caught his colon cancer early, so my father went on to live for 10 more years after that, right? But complications from diabetes, coupled with the colon cancer surgery, my father ended up dying later on from complications from colon cancer, coupled with diabetes. So then you take that 19-year-old boy who experiences these different losses, but who's been taught that there's not a deficit in your life, that everything has to be turned into an asset, right? All things work together for the good, right? And so when I began to look at my family situation, these calls kept coming. The calls later on were my brother, who was 49 years old at the time, needed a kidney transplant. When we went to go get tested to become kidney transplant, that's when we began to realize that diabetes was rampant in our family. So many of us didn't qualify to be living donors. So my brother had to get fortunately, he was blessed to get a kidney donor, and he's still alive today. But the last call that I got 6 months ago, my brother's been diagnosed with colon cancer. I'm tired of getting calls. So I do the work that I do because I'm tired of getting the call. I was tired of getting the call after I completed my graduate work here at UIC, and I was doing a breast cancer screening program called Pin a Sister, where we're using the faith-based model, using the church as the vehicle to have women, African American women and Latino women, stand up and take a stand and say, I commit to getting my screening mammogram. Doing that at the Apostolic Faith Church one Sunday, one Mother's Day, and I looked down the road, and my sisters were there because it was Mother's Day, but they celebrated with me, remember, I'm their baby. And so I looked down the road and I asked my oldest sister, did you get your mammogram? And she said, no, we've been so busy taking care of Dad, who had just died, that I didn't get my mammogram this year. I said, well, you gotta practice what I preach. So I need you to go get your mammogram. She went and got a mammogram and stage 1, right? So what you're hearing though is that when you think about the outcomes of my life, losing a father and a mother both to cancer, but then I look at my nephew, who still has my sister, his mother. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, he still has her because of early detection. When I look at my other nephew, who's a football player at Ferris State at the time, he still has my sister. Because, he still has his dad because of early detection for colon cancer. So when you take these experiences, and so you took your experiences and took them to the lab, I took my experience and took them directly to the community. I said, how can I create screening and navigation programs right in these very 4 walls of Miles Square Health Center that can ensure that people have outcomes like my brother and sister, not my mother and my father. And so we've been able to do that, as you said earlier, step by step by step. We're not at 95th Street yet, but we're close. We're one step closer than where we were when we first started the program here at Miles Square. We were at 12.7% for our colorectal cancer screening. We're now above 40%. Some of our sites even above 50%. And that's all due to the hard work of another Brown sister who's going to go get her PhD to sit in that back row back there. And I believe that all things happen in divine order, because as she hears your story, what you don't know is that she's been told so many times what she can't do. She's a neighborhood epidemiologist. She wants to build community navigation based on the community area that she grew up in, where she saw the navigation. So when she goes to our backyard clinic and she says, Kareem, this is not right, I look at the outcomes of this community clinic versus look at the outcomes of this community clinic, and I can see effect modifiers based on neighborhood, based on race and ethnicity. And I want to be able to build screening navigation programs to impact that. And people say, that's not truly epidemiology. But she's getting ready to go to San Diego and go into a PhD program where she'll become Dr. San Diego, and to be able to do this and sit in these seats and hopefully tell some other people that yes, you can. So when you hear those no's, I hope that your story has inspired her to say that I can do it. She may not be able to do it in the lab that she thinks, but there may be somebody right next door that will allow her to do her story. And so I just want us to say, hope we hear today that this is a continuing thing going on. We all started off as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. I was in a pipeline program sponsored by the Urban League called the New Lights, the National Urban League of Centers to Excel and Succeed. I remember this, and that was over 30 years ago. And I remember being an 8-year-old in that program. And I remember that program telling me that I could do, they didn't use the word community engagement, they actually used the word advocacy. Someone told me that you can do advocacy in science, and I was crazy enough to believe it. And now every day, I'm crazy enough to believe that I can do engagement and science to make sure that we're thinking about genetic counseling and genetic testing for breast cancer survivors so that their family members will know what test do I need, because I was able to go and get that counseling and that genetic testing to see, do I need to get a colonoscopy before 50? The answer would be yes, you do. Yes, you do. And my doctor at Northwestern came up with a treatment plan for me, saying that I need to get screened every 5 years based on my family. I knew that because I had access, awareness, health literacy, and internal navigation. So for those who don't have internal navigation, they need us to externally help navigate. So with that, I will say thank you, and I hope you continue to share this story, and I hope you all continue to see the importance of opening up the doors for little black girls, for brown boys, for brown girls to do the type of work that we've been doing. Moving right along.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dentist. I am a 12-year colorectal cancer survivor. And I was diagnosed at 36 years old. Never knew that I had a family history because I didn't know my father's side of the family. And I have what's called Lynch syndrome, which is a genetic link to colorectal cancer. But my story is a little bit tragic in the sense that happens a lot in minority communities. Is that A, I did not fit the bill for colon cancer, so I was misdiagnosed for 6 months. I wind up having my lady parts removed because, oh, you have fibroid tumor, so let's go ahead and let's take that, and that should be, we found cancer cells in the uterus, so that should be the probability that you have. So what do I said, okay, whatever it is, let's do it. So we did it. I was a bus driver at the time, so you can imagine being a bus driver having health issues, just didn't work. You're driving a bus, you're feeling dizzy and lightheaded, that just does not go too well. And so I wound up going to the emergency room 3 several times for issues relating to a colon cancer I didn't know I had. After my first surgery, they said I would be okay, and I felt okay a little bit. And the doctor called and said, you know what, we need to come back because we found some more cancer. So we need to come back. So I went back and they removed my ovary. And you'd be okay, I had blood transfusion. Okay, good, I felt perfect, I felt great, I was really well. Then 3 months later, I started feeling like I just wasn't feeling well, I couldn't keep the water down. So I called my primary care and he said, go to the emergency. But this time when you go, have them call me so I can tell them what to do. Because we're not going to have them send you home again. Because mind you, I had gone to the hospital, the emergency room 3 separate times. And all 3 of those times, they did not detect that I had colon cancer. Never did they even try to test me for colon cancer. So when I got there, he told them to do a blood draw. When they did my blood draw, my blood at that point was 5.2. And the nurse came in and said, how did you get here? And I was like, I drove. Because I didn't know that. And she said, but your blood count is 5.2. And I was like, okay. So again, what does that mean? And she says, well, you shouldn't be able to, you're losing oxygen. You shouldn't be able to breathe here because your blood level was too low. I'm like, okay, so fix it. So, I mean, that's what you think when you're a patient. You don't know, you just fix it. And so that's when another doctor came in and said, we think you may have colon cancer, but we're going to do a fecal blood test. And that was based upon the fact that they already removed my ovaries and the uterus, so they had no other choice to figure out where else I could do it. And so they came back to the fecal blood test, and we found that we're going to do a colonoscopy. And the colonoscopy, I did have a baseball-sized tumor in my colon, and I never left the hospital. An emergency room. I didn't know what that meant. Again, I'm a patient. I'm not a doctor. And so the first thing they said, well, you want someone to come and talk to you. And my question was like, what am I going to say? You said I had cancer and I'm going to get it out. Okay. But at that time, what do you really know what you want to talk about when somebody just says that you have cancer? You just want to get it out. I didn't know what that meant to have colon cancer. I knew what it meant to have cancer, but I didn't know how my life was going to change. So I had 95% of my colon removed. In the hospital 9 days, lost 50 pounds, came back home to 5 children. And my husband at the time was like, I can't do this. So he was gone, and I wanted my children here. My youngest at the time was 4. So I am trying to deal with, okay, let's see, I work at CCA, $184 in disability pay, $900 mortgage, $500 car note, and I still have 5 children I have to feed and get to school. So after I got home, I realized it was just too much. Social services, when I applied for disability, said that, I'm sorry, your lack of a colon is not a disability. So they denied me for disability. My mother tried to find me health services to help pay for the mortgage and help pay for sustainment. No luck. So with all of that, I was suicidal and attempted suicide. Because at that point, I had what was told to me at that time in 2003. The life expectancy for my colon cancer was 3 to 5 years. My baby was 4. And my thinking was, well, I'm going to die anyway. Why should they suffer and wash me out? But I was not successful. And God. And so I made a promise. But before I made that promise, I had a nurse in the psych ward that said to me, who can better tell your story than you? There's a reason why you weren't successful. You have to tell your story. Everyone's going to tell their version, but your children need to know. After I got out, I made a promise to God that I would do everything I could to raise awareness of colon cancer, to talk about the disparities, to talk about what my experience. There should have been no reason why I presented with symptoms of colon cancer and nobody ever tested. Nobody ever thought to test me because the guidelines 50 and over, and I was 35. So by my 36th birthday, I was in the hospital going through colon cancer removal surgery. So for the last 10 years, I have become an advocate to raise awareness of colon cancer, to talk about what happened to me, my experience, and why. And if something like this happened to me and I had a full-time job, imagine what other families are going through and they have nothing. How many other people were successful in their suicide attempt because they got colon cancer or a cancer diagnosis? Because they looked at their children and said, I can't take care of you, but suicide is my exit. and you'll be taken care of. So while I was trying to figure things out for years, I had been trying to talk to people. Sean knows. I had been knocking on doors. Hey, I got a story out. I'm a colon cancer survivor, right? And I guess I was a patient. Nobody knew me. Maybe I wasn't taking it so seriously. So I went national. So I started volunteering on a national level, going to Congress, talking about colon cancer, being a patient, being a survivor of my experience. So this past March, I just came back from Congress talking about the rules there for colon cancer, because those that are medicated, they are leaving a screening, a diagnostic screening with a bill if they have a move. That should be. I'm telling my story because I want people to realize that cancer is not just because we have colon cancer, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't prevent it. I didn't receive it. So that's the message that I want to share. I created a foundation called Blue Hat Foundation because I wanted to raise awareness of colon cancer in medically underserved minority communities. Because one of the things that I realized is that we are not educated about colon cancer. We don't know anything about it. I had never heard of colon cancer before I started. And so with that being said, so many other people, when I talk to people, they didn't know what colon cancer was. And some people even thought they could get colon cancer by having cancer. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine someone saying that, oh, I had a colonic, so I'm not gonna get colon cancer. That does not prevent colon cancer. So with that, I knew that I had to hold true to my promise to God to raise awareness. And the Blue Hats, I'm mistaken, where we had our 6th year this year of Blue Hat Blue Hat bow tie awareness at my church, United Church of Christ. And what Blue Hat bow tie Sunday is a day where people come to church, they're wearing blue hats, blue bow ties, anything just to raise awareness of colorectal cancer. And so when people see these pictures, they're like, why do you have on blue hats? Why does everybody at your church have blue? Oh, we were raising awareness of colorectal cancer. So everyone became accidental advocates for colon cancer, and it was non-invasive. But it was a way that they could dress up, they could feel happy, they could feel proud, and it worked. So we're in our 6th year. We have a Facebook presence, we have a Twitter presence, this year we had 2 churches in New York that signed on to do Blue Hat bow ties. We have Gilders Club, and so what we do is we provide resources. We bring resources to the church. And I think about what it was that I needed when I was diagnosed with cancer. Well, I didn't know there were support services that were out there for me that I could talk to. I didn't know that there were, people that could help me to do ADA accommodations. CTA did not work with me at all. They said either drive the bus or you can't. So I had to leave my job. And I've been in poverty ever since because I couldn't drive my bus. And that was my dream. But fast forward, what I'm doing to raise awareness is making people proud to wear the blue hats and say, guess what? My cousin had colon cancer and survived. Or my uncle was diagnosed with colon cancer, and but they passed away, but we found out that we had genetic link. So people are becoming aware, and so that's all it is. Blue Hat bow tie Sunday is simply to make minority communities aware of what colorectal cancer is, and take that information home and have the conversation. Talk to your family, because see, we're not in a time anymore where family secrets, you're not supposed to tell your business, because that's what it was when I was growing up. Don't tell what's going on, what goes on in the house, stay in the house. So I have a motto: family secrets kill me. So you need to talk about what auntie so and so had and what uncle so and so had. We can't have this conversation anymore about what I can't talk to you. So because I found out what my family history is, my daughters are now tested every year because I was diagnosed at a young age, so they have to be tested now in their 20s every year. My 2 older daughters present every year with polyps, every year. And so I know that me finding out my family history and me being diligent in talking about colon cancer has made me not only more aware, but it has made me more educated. And I can go and I can talk to other people and I can relate to the community in which I serve because I live. And I'm not coming in talking about something that I read in the textbook. I'm living. I'm still living. I still have to do this. And so the Blue Hat Foundation became a saving grace for me. Because not only was I saving other people's lives, I was saving my own. Because it gave me something to live. So I hope that my story encourages you all to continue what you're doing and realizing that minority communities are in need. They need what you do. They need what you have to offer. If not more. Thank you.
Well, floor is ours.
So I have a
React
question.
to it. Yeah.
My question is directed towards Dr. Green. Dr. Green, so you talked about, I think at the end, how people can help you. What can regular folk like me do to help your research?
So let me break down the question into two different parts.
Okay.
Okay. When you say regular folks like me, like me too, I'm regular too.
No, what I meant.
I know what you're saying. So I just wanted to lighten up a little bit. But what people can help me with is awareness for what I'm doing. I have two different avenues that I started. One is the GoFundMe page. That was my initial effort, and it's just GoFundMe/Dr. Green.
Okay.
The second one is something that I recently started. It's the Orally Cancer Research Foundation.
Mhm.
And that is in the process of being filed for checking it. So if someone wants to write a check that's tax deductible, it was that's still pending, but they said it was backdate to when it was filed. To help me. I am not a fundraiser.
Mhm.
That's not something that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about my work. So there are people who are good at fundraising who want to help me in those initiatives to raise money, either for paying for the patent attorney fees that my grant can't pay for, or also help with actually raising money for my lab at Morehouse School of Medicine. There's been a lot of pressure to commercialize the technology, but being at the School of Medicine, I'm still trying to navigate how to do that. But also, I know the process of pursuing this therapy in humans is going to cost millions of dollars in order for it to be available nationally.
So you said GoFundMe/Dr. Green.
Yeah, this slash Dr. Green. So if you go to GoFundMe and put in Dr. Green, you'll find my page.
You've already done animal studies so far?
I've done animal studies, and I guess I should have said this. So one of the therapies that I developed after a single minute treatment over the course of 10 to 15 days, it demonstrates 100% reduction of the tumor volume. And the pathologist that worked with me, who was on my dissertation committee, confirmed that there are no viable cancer cells after the treatment. That's the one that's the most promising and that has the most immediate promise. The other one that I developed, which is the subject of the grant, is the 3-in-1 platform to target, image, and treat cancer in a minimally invasive way. So you can literally inject this solution into the vein. It will circulate through the body, find the tumor, make it fluoresce or glow so that you can see it, and then you can follow it up with the therapy. So it's a minimally invasive way to target, image, and treat cancer. So those are the two platforms that I'm developing and pursuing. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. I got the GoFundMe, Dr. Green, and then you said Orally.
Yes, ORALEE, yes, Orally
Smith.
Foundation. If someone wants to write a check.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone, if you want to find more information about Dr. Green, you can go to her Facebook page, so you share that, just follow her on social media, and everything that you're asking, that information will be there. We want to keep the conversation about cancer research in the African American community.
And since everybody has one of these, how to spell my name is on the form. And you can find all the information on Facebook.
How do you do your information?
Okay, so I'm on Facebook, Dr. Hadia, HADIYAH, Nicole Green. Twitter is Dr. Hadia Green. Instagram, Dr. Hadia Green. And GoFundMe, Dr. Green.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Any other people? Go right ahead.
So I've worked at and this is actually the reference. The one thing that again, Kansas is for makes some sense why she actually has a struggle financially with that infection. And the one thing I'm going to say about very research is the number of people who use it as their gateway to greater economic opportunity. Oftentimes, we use it in communities that we consider and unfortunately, it's being federal governments that are funding these programs. Very small sample. One thing we do want to start auditing the application some careers from
Advocacy. I used to be, I guess I'm probably the most research-oriented member of the organization. I haven't checked the but me and a guy named John from up on the North Lake Shore were defined as the two most research-friendly members of Congress of the state of Illinois. We are still, almost every day, somebody comes to me with some research activity that they're trying to get some resources for. I mentioned to someone earlier that I was going out to the University of Chicago this afternoon because I had a couple of things I wanted to put into Robert hand, and I wanted to put in Jared's hand, that both involve research activities that people who are doing this, obviously, think it's super major. I think it's super major, and that's why when they're out there, so I get a chance to pigeonhole one of them. I try to take from every situation that I meet something that's going to be useful and helpful to me. I already came up with 3 things that I'm going to do as a result of this. One, I'm restarting my television show right down the street at Big Access. They got a new station. And they kind of give me that attitude. They have a process. But I'm also just thinking I'm confronted also with the idea and the fact that the workers over there are organized. And they've asked me to support their union organizing effort, which obviously is not their mandate. It's going to be. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do, what I do. Anyway, the other thing is that, I still go to church. And there's no reason that the Baptist church that I can't have to hold that. And you can't have blue hat Sunday. I mean, there's no reason that Trinity gotta be only. I mean, I'm a Trinity fan. Trinity every Sunday almost on radio. But I'm a Trinity, long time Trinity fan, but go somewhere else, that kind of stuff. Personally, I'm going to do all of that. What we need are other advocates, folks that association, they know when I'm related. I'm trying to get them to figure out a way to fund something. They currently people at CMS, that I call, they know I'm trying to get a regulation altered or looked at or changed or whatever. This country responds more to public engagement, broad scale public engagement more than anything. That more than anything, you can generate enough awareness. The reason these awareness days and months and all have emerged is that somebody thought. Because our world is so big and so much is going on. I always connect things. I'm so glad Captain Honeydew, always one of my heroes in the House of Representatives, who I have in Ohio. I was telling him, we just go to the chair of the Black Caucus Health Training. Number of things in Ohio have been made this broad advocacy, really. I remember when I was a kid, I grew up in the Methodist church. We had this preacher in the set that the people didn't want the bishops that have been and all the adults just got treated him badly, except my mother and father. They didn't. But I remember my sister and I were putting together a youth program, and he asked my sister something, and she responded the way the adults had been responding. I said, Reverend William, I didn't know that. He looked at her and he said, Sister Chris, there is enough that you don't know to make another whole. And I've always remembered that there is enough that any one of us don't know to make another whole. And that all kinds of things are going on. There's got to be the public habit. Right now, I'm advocating something for secretary. Right now, I'm advocating something for something else. I'm advocating. So we will do our advocacy, and we'll do it in the caucuses that I'm in, the Progressive Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, and all. But it really takes the there's so much competition. Right now, the federal government talks about the fact that we have a $20 trillion deficit. And there are people in Congress who believe that our primary focus ought to be trying to reduce the debt. So they're not willing to come up with any more money. The only way you reduce the deficit, of course, is to generate more money or stop spending as much as you spend. So we'll do our part in terms of trying to find specific places and what opportunities, but it's broad public, public awareness, and that's part of what we're doing right now. There's an old saying that even Bush is down there, the thing we have to say, will never make $1 million achieve time. All of it is
Congressman Davis,
of it.
I want to know if you'll add one other thing to your list. I work with the National Society of Black Engineers. As I told you when I met you there, all of my children are engineers. And we have an organization right here in Chicago. And I want to know if you would, because we have a huge gap in the number of engineers that this country needs and the number of doctors and researchers. We're trying to close that gap. So I was wondering if you would put on your list to help us do a STEM event for the youth in this area, because we have to find youth. We have to inspire and motivate our youth to go into these fields.
We're planning one right now.
Really? I'd love to be involved.
Every year, at the University of Illinois,
Mm,
we have a robotics
competition.
competition that I participate in
Okay,
and usually open it with some comments. It also just happens that a member of my staff is into it.
okay.
So we have our own team.
You
that
heard,
we
you
put-
heard of the National Society of Black
Oh,
Engineers?
I've been there many times.
Okay, okay.
There's also a young man, Jason Coleman, you remember Project Sincere?
No.
So Project Sincere was an organization started by a young African American male. Jason probably just turned 30. Jason is an engineer at the University of Michigan. We got together, two of the other friends, 3 African American males. They formed Project Sincere. Project Sincere has a summer camp that they're accepting applications for right now, and it's a STEM, science, technology, engineering, math summer camp that meets right here on the UIC campus. And then they also do some exposure at Northwestern, looking at medical simulation lab at Northwestern. They also go to Maryland. They go all around the city trying to think about innovation. So again, his name is Jason Coleman, and the organization's Project Sincere.
Okay.
And one other piece I would like to address related to what Sean talked about when he talked about research. What we're hoping is that we'll be able to produce, there's been some cuts into training programs that produce the Dr. Green and those budgets. And I think if, to Sean's point, if we had more Dr. Greens as researchers who come from these communities, then that research, that will make sure that research finds that those research finds are disseminated and really those communities in mind. But we really, that pipeline has to start with what we talked about, those high school students who come from these communities, because we're the ones who protect our communities. We're the ones who say, no, you can't do this helicopter type of research, get the data, and then leave. And my community looks the same as the Gabby, with your CV and your resume is now a lot more robust. You get tenure and promotion, but my grandmother still probably went to stage 2 or stage 4 cancer. So I think it's at the training level we can make, but that's only one piece of the solution.
The other thing that I would like to add to that is that the panel, when they're voting on who gets the grant, it doesn't look like this. It does not look like this. And so you do have a lot of the good old boys clubs happening at the National Institute of Health and the National Cancer Institute. And they are the ones who deciding who gets the health disparities grant. Right. And so until we have the credentials and we can decide who's getting the grant, like the panel has to be diverse in order for the recipients of the grant that the panel is deciding. It's a trickle down effect, but it starts with the people who are making the decision in the room when they have the the reviews,
Section.
yeah. And so if we're not in the room, we're not part of the conversation. And they're basing this on scientific merit still, not necessarily community impact. And that is something that policy could change. The community impact should be part of the discussion when they're making a decision on those health disparities. I think that would drastically change the way things are done.
But advocacy, you can't escape it any way you cut it. Advocacy still is the main ingredient that promotes change in this country. Whether it's voting, whether it's putting the right people in right places, whether it's advocating for people to be in policy decision-making positions, or being in the room when grants are being cut off, or decided on, or determining what the grants are to look like. It all boils down to advocacy, because we live in what is called a democratic environment, and unfortunately, some people think when we get to the basement that we're in the penthouse. And there's too much of that among African Americans. We're talking about change now and making change happen. And there's too much of the notion that progress to the basement is closer to the penthouse than what it actually is.
I want to first of all say thank you to the professionals. When I listen to you speak, it's clear at a very young time in your life you have purpose and you're driven. And most people can't say that. And that's your calling. And if you don't have purpose, you don't have passion, and you want to do what you went through to get to where you are today, which affects everybody. So if no one tells you, I'm thankful. My wife is a breast cancer survivor. And being a husband, a father, and having grandchildren, I didn't know if I was going to lose my wife. I didn't know. I was on the way to the meeting. She called me. The results came back. She was in tears. And I turned around and went to where she was. And she cried from that moment, which was about 11 a.m., all the way until the next day. And it's debilitating being a man and you can't help your wife. What could I do for her? When I listen to you guys, I'm looking at the panel, and this young lady right here, who was a survivor, she's diagnosed at 36, it's almost like she was on the other end of the spectrum. There you have the advocacy portion that's over here, and then you have the doctors and the scientists that have involved in the middle. For me, when we got the news, I didn't want my wife to have cancer, but we made provisions before, meaning that we had to pay insurance, we have cancer policies, right? Birth diagnosis, they EFT us a small amount of money. That allowed my wife to not have to go to work, right? She didn't have to go to work. She just could go through the treatment. I guess the best part about it is that it was early detection. It was something so small, 5 millimeters, and she went through that whole process. She had to go treatment. My wife is a strong person, so she did her 33 sessions, didn't take a day off. Still, I'm looking at her getting weaker and weaker and weaker as we go through these sessions. And I'm thinking, my God, is there any other form of treatment that she could have had that would have still given her everything that she has? And when I'm listening to this young lady, when she talked about the challenges she went through with her husband and the children, and as a husband, I didn't leave. As a husband, I want my wife to be around, but also as a provider, I knew that in my profession, we have these things. We have financial policies in place. And when my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, the first thing I did a couple of days later was I got on the phone with all of her friends and her family. And none of those people had cancer policies. None of them had cancer policies. So as I look around the room, you know, I asked the question, how many of us now that we're okay, we don't have cancer, but do you have a cancer policy? Because you guys know the numbers, 1 in 2 males will be diagnosed at some point, and 1 in 3 females. And if we are working on this thing from an advocacy standpoint, right, and then we have our brilliant doctors, then as regular working people, got to be able to mesh all those together. And I think part of it is the information piece, because I didn't know anybody who ever had cancer outside of my life.
So can I? So shortly after I was looking forward, I started doing AFRA, which had a cancer policy. One of the biggest issues with that is for those of us, and I say us now because I work in aesthetics, my day job. You have to choose between whether or not you have to pay level heat, electricity, bills. So that's not always feasible for those of us that are, that don't have the jobs that afford us to have a little extra money. So now, and I'm so happy that your wife did that. My mother works for the city. I made sure after I was diagnosed, she got it.
Exactly.
So those friends of mine that are able to afford it, I tell them to get it. Unfortunately, for the demographic that are diagnosed with colon cancer on a larger scale. And I didn't know about the cancer policy. I went to the and I still had great insurance. I emptied my 401. I mean, so I understand it, but reality is for some people that just isn't.
The best policy for cancer prevention, in my view, is screening, early intervention, prevention, and education, which is what Oak Street Health is all about. I'm one of the outreach directors, and all of our 15 centers are located in underserved communities where we are trying to provide this type of policy for the people in most need. It was interesting that the Commissioner of Health of Chicago talks about zip code health disparities. There's a 16-year life expectancy differential between the more affluent brothers and sisters downtown than, as she says, 3 or 4 red line stops to the south. This is not right. And so our solution is a business solution. The founders of Oak Street Health, brilliant doctors, Harvard training, have come up with a healthcare model for older adults, which is our exclusive focus. Seniors 65 and older. And while prevention education is not the full answer, obviously, given the prevalence of the incidence of cancer, but it's a good start, and we can catch a lot of it.
And I agree with you. And it's 2 points I want to make. One point of that is it's this piece of what one of my mentors is Dr. Terry Mason. And Dr. Mason tells us to never look at one single sentence in the paragraph and don't just read one paragraph in the book. And so when I think about one of those paragraphs, it's around advocacy for genetic counseling and genetic testing. The reason I have a whole treatment plan for when I get my colonoscopy, when I get my colon cancer screening, based on several things that from a financial perspective, A, that I had a job, right? B, with that job came healthcare insurance. With that healthcare insurance, I was able to understand that I get certain genetic counseling through that. But most people don't know that the Affordable Care Act actually supports and requires that we do genetic risk assessment through the Affordable Care Act. So even our Medicaid patients who think that they don't have access to it, our Medicaid population have access to genetic counseling. And genetic counseling is different than genetic testing. Genetic counseling is that conversation. It's that conversation starter where we say, I don't want to hear that you have female cancer. I want to know what type you have. Because if it's ovarian versus cervical, that puts you in a different category for your genetic risk factor for breast cancer. I need to understand what my genetic makeup is. Because Lynch syndrome, who gets that? And so ask these questions, and that can all happen through an hour visit with a genetic counselor that is paid for through Medicaid. That's one piece of it. And the other piece I want to do a call to action, particularly to my brother over there, is that on May 10th, we're going to be hosting 20 conversations. And I'm trying to find people that are willing to have conversations about advocacy and navigation and screening that we don't commonly talk about. The financial piece of it is one we don't commonly talk about. So we will provide the location and you will lead the discussion. It's a free discussion. We want to have these small group discussions on May 10th around various topics around cancer screening navigation. And I want to have them all throughout the city, all throughout the 77 community areas. This is something that's sponsored by Chicago Community Trust called On the Table. I'm inviting you, if you are available, to host that conversation with us, because that dialogue that you started, we need to have other little foot soldiers, just like you, who can begin to talk about this advocacy. Our sister Tamika back there talking about what's going on in Gilda's Club, because Gilda's Club may not have existed, my sister right here, in that area, but in the way they exist now. But you have somebody like Tamika who hears these stories and saying, how can I go back to my advocacy organization at Gilda's Club and think through the social needs that these patients have?
Yeah.
That's one of the things with the Impact Foundation. But other things that we're doing is having a conversation and asking people, the first we have a family tree that you give out at the event, talk to your family members, take it back home, and call the aunts and uncles and ask them who had what. And so, and then take that family tree and either do it Christmas and Thanksgiving, whatever, once a year, and email it. You know, fax it, send it in a card to family members so that everybody in the family can have it. Just like you treasure photos, treasure this family tree so that you all know what health issues happen at home.
Hi, Congressman. I want to thank you, one, for the support that you give to this whole organization network and everything that we do. But as I'm here today and I listen to the stories, I listen to Candace, my question for you, and I'm glad that Julian brought up the advocacy and sort of the roadshow. One of the things that you mentioned, Candace, that, you know, African Americans and people of color don't particularly talk about what is happening in people. But as you talk about Trinity in the past, the thing that strikes me the most is that as a group, we don't talk about all the intersecting things. We don't talk about, you know, we're talking about cancer care, but organ tissue donation is very huge for minority communities of color. If you're going to have advocacy roadshows, I would hope that there's something that we could do, that we could talk about all of these things that are important and that go together, that all of our communities need to hear. So yes, Trinity needs to hear about the impact, but yes, all the other churches need to hear about that. But Trinity also needs to hear about the emphasis for education and outreach for organ tissue donation, breast cancer awareness, on so many things, on mental health. There are things that I feel like being in this group today, that we should sort of kind of put them together and have that type of advocacy roadshow and talk about all the things that are important to communities of color. And yes, you know, cancer is important, but they're all important together because some of them are because of our lifestyle. Okay? Some of them are hereditary, genetic, and some of them sort of go together. And so these are the things I think as a roadshow or the advocacy, you know, program that you're going to have, you should sort of weave into things. I like that you want to have this gentleman to talk about financial aspect, but there's some other things that need to go in with this.
I would love to have you answer.
I want to add something real fast. If I sit here in this room, I can't help but to think the scripture and somebody may have so much inspired. And that's why people sitting at the table, but also in the audience. A lot of great people in the audience and the ideas are rolling. I kind of want to jump back to the insurance portion as far as the cancer is concerned. I help the family. I also work with Aflac, and I'm a broker. And I help the family get a cancer policy for $25 a month. Now, I know sometimes we say, well, wait a minute, you know, we're already robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we got to sew Peter and no Paul in some situations. But I think it's a mindset change. I think we need to stop saying, oh, we don't have enough money for this, and then start thinking, well, it's really reach for it, not to have it. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And some of those same people that say, well, wait a minute, I can't afford an extra $25 a month for some life and for some cancer insurance for my family are the same people that may go to the beauty supply store and spend $300 on hair, or maybe go out to eat 2 or 3 times a month. So my thing is that if we have people like you guys, and if we do these types of awareness and advocating properly, then the shift will take place and people will see where it really fits into their budget. Because I guarantee you those same people who say I can't afford it, give them one trip to the doctor and diagnose them with cancer, those are the calls that I get. Well, I can't do anything now, but then, so you understand what I'm saying? I would like to be in the room. I'm a radio host, but I'm also an insurance agent. So whatever hat I can wear, especially as far as fundraising, and I don't mean to toot my own horn, but sometimes you just got to toot it, toot. When
when I go live or whenever I'm talking, because of my radio show is the Cat Out radio show, we let the cat out the bag and we're not afraid to let the cat out. And this is a cat that needs to be let out the bag.
Yeah, but we also have to be conscious. We have to be very sensitive to what people are doing with, because even though their mindset is, I can't afford it, they probably can. And they probably, and the mentality of the people is like, it's not gonna happen to me. And you're right. Having sold Aflac and having sold insurance, I do get that. But also, I have to also understand that when people say they can't afford it, they know their budget better. And they want to spend $25 on coffee a month, that's their choice. We can't make it. It has to be more important to them than it is for us, but they have it. And so, but to educate them that the information is available to them, that's one. But that's as much as you can do, because you just never. And sometimes people block out that particular information because they just don't want to associate themselves with that. And so when you push that information, you might wind up doing more harm than good. So give them the information for them.
Right, give them the whole story, give them, because it's the stories like yours, it's the awareness and advocating that will make the shift. When you know better, you do better. One last thing I just want to say, Hosea 4:6 says our people are destroyed, but for a lack of knowledge. But the most important part of that verse is because when the knowledge was given to them, they reject the knowledge. So once we've done our job, then our job is officially done. So I understand.
So again, thank you again, panel, for your fine discussion. One of the things I do want to make sure that you all know is one of the challenges with colon cancer, not sexy. Breast is sexy, ovarian sexy, not only in a disparity way, but it is. Look at the funding that happened. Colon cancer, prostate cancer, they're not sexy at all. And in our community, talk to males about it, fun, say, no, sir, that's when we're here, right?
And we have to mention lung cancer. More people will die from lung cancer. More women will die from lung cancer than breast, colon, and pancreatic combined.
Exactly.
More men will die from lung cancer than prostate, colon, and pancreatic combined. We're not having that conversation because it's not a sex. And it's also what we call a multi-determinant conversation. When you think about tobacco, let's have a quick science conversation about tobacco and smoking and what it does to that. So Dr. Robert Wynn, our cancer center director, had a question. He said, why is my patients, my African-American female patients who come to the VA to see me as a pulmonary critical care doctor, why do they get more aggressive cancer but smoke less? What's happening at the molecular and cellular level? What he found out is that it's a gene called a tumor suppressor gene. They're what we call downregulated, meaning it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Tumor suppressor genes, they suppress the tumor, right? So if this gene is downregulated in African American women or in women, because something in women, something unique happens when a woman smokes that doesn't necessarily always happen when a male smokes, right? So just that cigarette smoke to a woman is more dangerous, possibly, than it is to that man. And so his lab is working on a model that says, if you have this tumor suppressor gene, then we need to create a test by doing a swab or a blood test that looks at a biomarker. You can, when you go to the doctor, that biomarker can say, you know what, you are susceptible to this particular gene. You have this missing gene. If you smoke, you may get a more aggressive form of lung, right? But we need to have these conversations, and like Sean said, the research needs to drive those types of questions. We call it bench to community. So what he's asking at the bench level is based on what he saw at the community level, right? Yes, yes, and that's why we gotta have a conversation.
Then my last question, I'm sorry for Congressman Dan, thank you so much for being here. Is there any chance that what Joe Biden's blue shot approach can help in the minority as well?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, everything is possible. I mean, all you gotta do, when I say I remember when community health center, this health center was in built. I'm sure Dan and Trent and Curly and Lynn both there didn't know it was going to end up being in a $20 million. I'm sure they did. The people who marched, people who demonstrated, people who cried, people who agitated, people who did all the things that people have done, was very interesting. I had a very good friend. You may know how. They don't know I mean, there is so much connectivity in terms of what goes on in the world. And if I have not learned anything else, there is one thing I've learned. There are no simple solutions to very complex problems. There are no simple solutions. Frederick Douglass used to say there was one thing he knew, and that is, in this world, we may not get everything that we pay for, but we will pay for everything that we get. And if we don't pay one way, we will pay another way. The reason Bernie Sanders and those people think like him feel that we must have a national health plan. National health insurance. I'm one of those. I've been thinking that way for at least 35 years. I used to run with Quinn Young, just 9 years ago. We go to conferences and sleep on the floor. People just have enough money to go to jail. We drive all across America. One guy used to drive to California. Raggedy car. But I'm saying struggle. Struggle. There's no substitute for it. There's no way around it. Everything that you want, somebody else wants something different. Everything that you believe, somebody else believes something different. There are many people who believe that government is out of its realm when it attempts to do all of these things that we do with government. They believe that that's not the reason government got started. They take the position that government emerged for the simple purpose of managing conflict that exists in society. And then when government goes beyond that, then government is out of its realm. Well, that's where the song comes. This stuff is real. That they talking and they believe. Every time I go to a meeting in Washington, it's about what do we cut, not what do we invest in. What do we cut? I used to mail 200,000 letters to the people in my district twice a year with good information in it. We haven't done that in the last 4 or 5 years because of something called sequestration. Stop spending public money on these things. And so we just fight and struggle and fight and argue. That's every day. It used to be fun to go to Washington for meetings, but now already know what the discussion, no matter what, I passed the bill 2 weeks ago. People in the hood ain't gonna know how it is. I mean, they really aren't. I mean, those who watch and who are involved in child welfare, they know that it's a good thing. But other people won't know that what we did to make it easier for people to adopt children from other states or to become foster parents to children who might be in St. Louis as opposed to in child welfare applicants. People in the hood don't know much about what we're talking about. I'm sitting here thinking, how do we get over that problem? And how do I partner maybe with Henry Taylor safely? Why don't we take one of these over to the house? Or why don't we get 5,000 lawyers for my over there right in all the public housing development? Come up here one year, get them engaged in this kind of conversation. They have colon cancer. They have colon cancer. they have everything else too. And so it's a frustrating to some degree, but it's not if you really understand change. It does not frustrate me one single bit. Not at all. Because I know we talk about violence. Guess what? Cain and Abel killed each other and murdered 5 or 6 people in the world, according to the Bible that I read. There wasn't nobody here but them and Adam and Eve. They had another brother, supposedly named Seth, but he didn't do nothing. So ain't nobody heard much about him. So there's 5 or 6 people in the world, and one of them killed each other. And we act like violence is a big deal that we are surprised at. I was reading the Bible the other day, and somebody said that one of the kings prayed for the good Lord. He killed 180,000. I mean, so there's no unusual. We're trying to effect this union that the guys that in the room talked about. And they certainly wasn't talking about no all men being equal. They only meant all men who had education, men who were equipped to make decisions, who had money. They weren't even talking about all white men. And they weren't talking about the black slaves. They only counted them as 3/5 of a person. They put it in the Constitution. So how can we be surprised about his heritage when the black slaves in the country were counted in the Constitution of the United States as 3/5 of a person? There is just so much to know and so much to learn and so much to be involved with. And so I wake up every day trying to think, what am I going to do today that might actually move the needle on something? I don't know what. On something. And nothing is exciting and stuff going on with our kids. You know, you're going out and going out without vision made. Life is just 60 seconds in it. You know, can't excuse something we just the kind of that turn into. And that's all. The only answer is to wake up every day. Right. A friend of mine tells a little thing and says every day somewhere in the jungle. The fastest gazelle start out. But also in that same jungle, the fastest lion wakes up and starts out. And he said the interesting thing is that if the lion is going to eat, he got to outrun the gazelle. And if the gazelle is going to live, he got to outrun the lion. And he says, whether you are a lion or a gazelle, every day of your life, you got to wake up the hill. You know, something's going to overpower you. Something's going to catch you. And this kind of discussion is so stimulating, so intriguing, so involved. I don't even want to say anything else, but I would say this. I often close meetings with this little saying. I am not all people, but I am. I cannot do all things, but I can do something. That which I can do, I will do. I hear that. That's the only way that
I just want to say I'm one of the members from the CAT show co-host, and I'm also the facilitator for Educational Task Force with Commissioner Richard Boykins. and my business is involving souls. And I just want to commend each and every one of you for getting this research out. I had a mother that died of cancer, emphysema. I had a father that died from lung cancer and throat cancer, and also had grandmothers that died from, one died from lung cancer and one died from colon cancer. And I just want to commend each and every one of you and encourage you to keep doing what God is leading you to do, because your best is your best. Your passion is, the people, the community. You reaching out to the people. So keep doing what you're doing and reaching out to those lost souls that need people like you. God
All
bless you.
right, either one of you got a last word, and then
I just want to quick mention something because I'm here representing the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Thank you for the great discussion, very important information. There are a lot of African Americans also affected by throat cancers, and for us to bring the information and the resources is always been a big issue. And I'm very appreciated that you are giving us the opportunity to join the conversation and resources to the African American community. We have survivor here in the room that can share his story, how difficult it was for some patients to access information. And I think that, having this group of stakeholders in the community will make a difference. Just by working together, we will accomplish a lot with the support of Congressman, researchers like you. We are going to work for the direction.
My last name was Chris Craig.
Let's do this, keep the conversation going. If you want to host one of these conversations, all you have to do is just let them know, reach out to us through IC Cancer Center, and I'll give you that information. We would love to have you in the resource you need to keep this conversation going.
My last statement would be, please continue to support and encourage.
all right, well, Nikki, thank you. Christy, thank you.